have been identified.
Wait, that's not what actually happens. Who eats donuts without coffee, am I right? So I worked in a nuclear reactor at age 18. Yep, instead of choosing to work at your local McDonald's, I instead chose a job at your local nuclear research reactor. More specifically, I chose to participate in my college's reactor training program. My college is unique in that it has a reactor run primarily by undergrad students. Working in a nuclear reactor for many can feel like a high-stress job giving you arthritis even though you're barely 22, making you think, why did I get this job again? Oh yeah, college tuition. I chose to join this program even though it would count as 3 college classes. I get no credit for doing it, and I don't even have a guarantee of being one of 15 people to finish the program. Yes, I was that dedicated to this. But Ruth, why? Isn't it obvious? Because it sounds super cool. But besides that, I enjoy learning basic nuclear physics related to the reactor, and I thought the experience would relate to my major in applied math. There is a bit of math involved, such as measuring exponential decay or radiation dosage, and I just like learning anything having to do with science. We learned a lot about the main types of radiation, alpha, beta, and gamma, and radiation interactions, including Bremsstrahlung, which is when a particle slows down when passing the nucleus. We learned about what we should and should not use to protect ourselves from radiation. Like, don't use lead to shield beta radiation because then you cause secondary radiation. Use wood or plastic instead. Alpha radiation cannot easily penetrate human flesh, but if it does, it destroys a lot. On the other hand, it's easy for gamma radiation to penetrate human flesh, but it does not cause much damage. And you thought the periodic table was big enough? Well, you're in luck. There's now this thing called the nuclide table. Look how big it is. Holy macaroni! It shows all elements and what isotopes they can radioactively decay into. So, the training program. It's one class equivalent to 4 college classes. There's a lecture every Monday night. Okay, sounds reasonable so far, right? Well, then you have a lab on Wednesday or Thursday. Still sounds reasonable for a science class, right? Well, then you have to study for this thing called a checkoff, which is an oral quiz you must take by 5 p.m. the Friday of that week. These were hard quizzes because you had to know stuff that no one had ever taught you. Instead, you have to come into the reactor on your own time to ask the people there to explain everything to you. Sometimes you could find the stuff in our textbook or the SOPs, the standard operating procedures, but you nearly always had to ask for help. Did I mention we had a bunch of homework due every Monday and a quiz on Monday night based on the reading we did over the weekends? Plus, there were large projects that we needed to do each month on our own time. Yes, this program wanted more than my actually important college classes did, but I chose to stay in it, and it was actually the best part of my experience there, which is probably really bad because I can't major in nuclear reactor operation. On that note, maybe I should just drop out of college and become an operator full-time. I mean, you don't need a degree to do that. You just need to pass the NRC licensing exam. The purpose of this program was to prepare you for the NRC exam and get you a job at the reactor. So yeah, another downturn to this big commitment was that you would not be able to work in any other reactor, only this one. There are so many differences between reactors that just because you've worked at one reactor doesn't mean you're trained to work at another one. But I still did it. My roommate still judges my decision to this day. Within the first few weeks of the training program, there were a bunch of people interested. But then we lost about half of those people when they realized how impossible this program was. But I stayed. I was going to get that certificate. We were given mentors, and I was paired with another person with mine. Our mentor is basically our go-to person for getting help with anything related to the program. The only time I ever saw my partner was when we had our first lab, which was just a tour given by our mentor. After that tour, we stayed in the facility, freaking out about the checkoff in a couple of days that we would have to take. The guy spotted the SOPs and tried finding answers in them, but as I established earlier, the SOPs don't tell you squat. The other groups were stressed too, but they'd given up already, accepting their doom. I kept asking for help because I wouldn't accept defeat. I had to pass my first checkoff. I was going to get that certificate, that fancy piece of paper. Thankfully, studying for hours on end at 1 a.m. the morning of apparently paid off. Anyways, it goes without saying that I never saw my partner ever again, except like in the cafeteria or something, because he didn't pass his first checkoff, but we don't talk about that. Like I've said, checkoffs are hard and stressful. Sometimes I enjoy getting to ramble about what I know and show them how smart I am, but other times it's a perfect chance for older kids to ask you questions like, what do you do when a shooter asks you to take them to the core? So they can judge your decision-making skills on the spot. Or they might ask you what to do if a mysterious package arrives at the facility, the obviously incorrect answer being to open it. I'm glad to say that I survived a lot of the filtering out of trainees, and that I got to learn a lot during my time in the program. One of the biggest things we had to learn was, well, everything about the facility itself. The facility was a small one, and it was not for commercial energy, it was for college research. We memorized where everything is, phones, fire extinguishers, grab bags, alarms, etc., as well as how everything works. We memorized the piping systems, which are important for keeping the reactor cool, as well as keeping gases in isolation. And we had to learn how to read these really weird meters that nobody actually knew how to read. Just write something down. You'll figure it out eventually. We learned about the core of the reactor, the most important part of it, which is literally called the core. The core sort of looks like this. That blue stuff is called Cherenkov radiation, which is basically beta radiation moving very, very quickly. And I learned that it would be a great place to hide a dead body, but I definitely don't want to fall into it or else I'll be destroyed by the extremely high pressure. To fish samples into and out of the Lazy Susan, which is in the core, we would use a fishing pole. Yes, you heard that right. But there was another way to get samples into the core. We could do it through the rabbit, which is this chamber that you can use to send samples to the core through a pipe. Before sending it in, we would need to call whoever was operating in the control room to let them know that a sample would be entering the core through the rabbit hole. Yes, we were going for an Alice in Wonderland theme here. There was even this machine that we used to clean samples, and it had a name and a bow tie, I'm sorry I forgot his name, and a smile. The operators would change his bow tie every day, and he had toys all over him. It was really cool, but I wasn't really allowed to touch him because I was just a trainee. It would wink and smile at you with its cute pixelated face. It had a voice. It was cool and kind of creepy at the same time. In fact, it wouldn't just give short bits. It would never stop talking sometimes. You probably don't believe me, but it was a talking robot. It could speak. It said words to me. You're sweet and all, but I think we should see other people. We're just forbidden to be together, separated by our difference in anatomy and machinery. Hey, don't get sappy with me. I saw you talk to all the other operators. Actually, remember that this is a reactor run by a bunch of undergrads, right? And what happens when undergrads are in charge of anything? They cover it with memes, and bad memes at that. Most of the memes were related to Homer Simpson in some way. Why, you might be asking? Because Homer Simpson works in a nuclear reactor. He's basically every nuclear reactor operator's role model and god, the one we all strive to be like. Anyways, we also learned about how to use and calibrate radiation detectors. The gamma spec is really scary to use because of the possibility of you standing in front of the radiation beam, but greenies are cool to use. They're not scary. I like them. One of my favorite things we learned was what to do during emergencies. First off, when most people hear the phrase nuclear reactor, this is usually what runs through their head. Fun fact, Godzilla was created in response to the atomic bombing of Japan, so this example is actually pretty relevant to our topic. One of the things I should probably clear up first is that working in a nuclear reactor is not dangerous. Sure, there have been huge nuclear disasters in places such as Chernobyl, Ukraine, but those are rare and far in between and result from poor leadership. Quite sadly, working here isn't like in the movies. In fact, everyone who had been working there for a long time said that there has never been the smallest accident there, and this has been from generations to generations of workers. Darn it, safety! Where are the dying people? Where's the excitement? Where's the action? But that doesn't mean that mistakes cannot happen in reactors. They're just usually not big or very harmful, and they rarely happen. We had to memorize the procedure for when there was contamination. Do any necessary life-saving first. Set up a clean line in an intermediate zone if possible. Helping anyone who is contaminated is the first priority. Take off their clothes, give them coveralls, wash their skin, and get them out of the contaminated area. Clean up the spill. Throughout, keep checking everything with detectors. While doing this, we, the operators, have to wear a lab coat, gloves, and booties. We have to be careful to make sure we don't recontaminate anybody or anything, and we try to keep anyone who is contaminated away from anybody or anything. We practice this all with radiation sources that are not harmful, or at least I assume so, because the people we were practicing with kept intentionally throwing it around and contaminating everybody, and it was freaking me out. Ruth, because you worked in a reactor, didn't you get a lot of exposure to radiation? Oh yes, my chances of getting cancer are higher than yours. We had to walk around with dosimeters on that looked like unfashionable green rings and little ID badge buttons. People working in a reactor usually have higher radiation doses than people who don't, but that doesn't mean we're not healthy or anything, because these are still low doses. Actually, because the reactor is blocked from the outside by heavy concrete walls, and we never go outside, we don't get much exposure to UV radiation from the sun, so ha! It's also more dangerous to sit by a microwave than to be in a nuclear reactor facility. Whenever someone leaves the room with the core, feet and hands are checked at the door with a dose measuring machine, and someone in the group carries a dosimeter in their pocket. We have to ensure no harm is presented to the public. Okay, Ruth, we get it. You're dedicated to this thing even though it's probably not worth it. Well, what would you do when you got the job? You'd expect me to be operating the reactor, saving lives and stuff, right? The usual. That's usually what we don't do, actually. Instead, we just spend our days calibrating everything, giving tours, and doing labs for local schools. Of course, then there would be mentoring the next year's trainees and giving checkoffs every week. Finally, I want to emphasize one of the most important aspects related to working in a nuclear reactor. Nuclear is good. Like stated previously, many people have fears of nuclear and just think nuclear is bad. I might appear biased because I've worked in a nuclear reactor, but I'm here to tell you that nuclear energy is good. Compared to fossil fuels, nuclear energy does not contribute to climate change. Plus, it is much more energy efficient and can lead to new innovations in technology. Nuclear accidents are very rare, and nuclear reactors present near to no danger to the public. From being involved with the Model United Nations in high school, I learned a lot about the global uses and impacts of nuclear energy. IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, is a committee that I got to write about in the Model UN handbook and teach little kids about in presentations. I also got to read resolutions about nuclear power, radioactive waste, and nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons, obviously, are not good, which has resulted in laws such as the Nuclear Weapon Ban Treaty. However, given fears around nuclear weapons, some governments have limited research and development in the other non-violent uses of nuclear energy. One example, nuclear rockets. Using nuclear energy in rockets could let us travel much farther through space in a shorter amount of time while using less fuel. However, according to these laws, there are limits on throwing nuclear-powered items into the atmosphere. So research in nuclear rockets in the US has basically become non-existent. What is that? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, the Koreans are finally nuking us! No! They're finally ending our suffering! No! I hope that I was able to help you have less fear of nuclear energy. On another note, there are some people, like my brother, who insist that nuclear energy can give you superhero powers or something. I think it goes without saying that this doesn't happen. Don't listen to what others may tell you. Also, you won't become radioactive from being in contact with radiation, and radiation exposure is not contagious. Anyway, what did we learn today? If you work hard, you can become a reactor operator too. Because I do not have a lot of experience with reactor operation like my superiors, and any professional operators viewing this would probably publicly shame me, I probably did not give the best information or experiences, but I wanted to share my take. If this video has made you interested in considering a job as a reactor operator, you should check out the NRC government website and maybe look around for any local nuclear reactors, although probably the nearest one will not be local because people don't want to be by reactors because they're afraid of them, so it'll be really far away, but you know what I'm saying. Sadly, I cannot tell you everything because I'm required to not release a number of things according to the rules by the FBI, like any information that would potentially help someone take over the reactor. I also don't have many of my own pictures of the reactor because we had to ask permission whenever we wanted to take a picture. Plus, there are a number of colleges and universities with their own reactors and nuclear engineering programs. Ones I would recommend would be Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute or MIT. In fact, as I understand it, Rensselaer has its own nuclear reactor, accelerator, and a nuclear engineering undergrad degree. At MIT, undergrads can work in the large reactor. Various colleges also have nuclear physics degrees if you want to go more into the research side of things. There are lots of reactor operation resources you can find online, including simulations and textbooks to study and try out, so good luck! I hope that I was able to introduce you to the world of nuclear, or to at least help you learn a few new things today. I think that if working in a nuclear reactor, becoming a nuclear engineer, or being involved with innovating the various uses of nuclear energy appeals to you, then you should take a shot at it. You will have a super awesome job that you can brag about around your friends who work in retail or the fast food industry. Ew. If you have questions, you can try contacting me, and either I can answer it or I can try to find the answer somehow or talk to somebody else who may know the answer. One last thing I need to say. Did you know that being exposed to radiation could actually be good for your immune system? Huh? I wasn't supposed to tell them that? Like I've said before, working at one reactor is not like working at another, so not all reactor experiences will match mine. Let me know if you would like to see me give more technical advice and information about nuclear reactors, or if you would like me to tackle other topics such as nuclear weapons or something. Thank you for watching.
Huh?
What?
Noise!
What's going on? I'm
noise.
5
confused.
minutes before critical
Is
mass.
it
Critical
another
what?
fire drill or something?
Okay, don't panic. Whichever problem this is, I'm sure they know how to handle it. Huh?
Calm down, Homer. Remember what
it's
to
my
do.
problem! We're
You
doomed!
need to check the manual
somewhere
again.
there's a thingy that tells you how to work this stuff. The manual! The manual, right!
Here, Homer. Just
Huh? Who'd have thought a nuclear reactor would be so complicated? Gotta pick a
Just
button,
let me
pick a button,
explain
pick a
it. I
button.
know.
No, one potato, two
wait.
potatoes,
You don't
three
know what?
potato, four.
Homer,
No,
what are
wait.
you doing?
Bubblegum,
Stop,
bubblegum,
Homer.
minute.
Homer,
Eeny, meeny,
don't
miny,
just.
moe.
What are you
Catch a
doing?
tiger by
That's
the
not the.
toe.
What
If
is?
he hollers,
Stop!
let him go. Eeny,
No.
meeny,